Hey, this is Pastor Bunjee Garrett, and I want to take some time today to present you with another word of encouragement. Well, just in case you haven't heard, you might like to know that there's a middle school teacher from Ohio. She just secured a sizable settlement after being forced to resign from her position as an English teacher, and for no other reason than refusing to use the preferred names and pronouns of two transgender students. It actually started back on the first day of school in August of 2022. That's when two students approached Vivian Garrity and they asked her to refer to them with names that were different from the names on the school's roster. Well, rather than complying, Garrity continued to refer to the two students by their given names, and it's for this reason that the students reached out to a school counselor, in order to complain about the treatment of their English teacher. Well, in response to that complaint, administrators from the Jackson local school district, they tried to compel Garrity to call the two self-described transgender students by their preferred pronouns and names, and Garrity sat through several meetings with school administrators who pressured her to use the preferred pronouns and names. But, rather than caving into this, Garrity refused to comply by insisting that their requests were actually violating her Christian convictions. It's for this reason that she was forced to resign. Well, according to a representative from the Alliance Defending Freedom, his name is Logan Spina, the school tried to force Vivian to accept and repeat the school's viewpoint on issues that go to the foundation of morality and human identity, like what makes us male or female, by ordering her to personally participate in the social transition of her students. When she refused to comply with this agenda, the administrators there at the Jackson local school district, they forced Garrity to turn in her letter of resignation. Now, fast forward to December 18th, 2024, and what we discover is that the school district ended up settling with Garrity. That's right, the taxpayers there now owe Garrity $450,000 in damages and attorney fees following a lawsuit in which the school district was accused of violating her First Amendment rights. That's right. Logan Spina explains it in this way, and I quote, "The First Amendment prohibits the abuse of power, and Jackson local school district officials have learned that comes at a steep cost." That's right. The government cannot legally rob us of our First Amendment rights. And it's for this reason that Garrity had no problem winning this case. Spina also added that Garrity's religious beliefs and understanding of science govern her view that a person is male or female based on sex, not personal identity. And participating in a student's social transition violates those beliefs by forcing her to communicate messages that she believes are untrue and harmful to the student. Well, as a result of her strong stand, this teacher who refused to compromise her Christian convictions is now going to receive this massive settlement, for all of her troubles. In similar fashion, the Alliance Defending Freedom has also secured settlements for several other teachers who have faced similar situations. This includes a teacher in Virginia named Peter Vlaming. Vlaming actually won a $575,000 settlement after he was fired for refusing to use a transgender student's preferred pronouns. It was actually back in 2018 when Vlaming was fired for refusing to use male pronouns for a 9th grade student who identified as male. While Vlaming, said he would refer to the student by their new name, he refused to use the preferred pronouns by citing his Christian faith, which leads the believer to speak the truth in love. Vlaming considered the use of male pronouns for this student to be a lie, and it's for this reason that he was fired. Well, it was just this past October when this case was placed before the state's Supreme Court. And it was at that point in time when a Virginia school board agreed that they're going to pay Vlaming $575,000 in this settlement. 7 of the justices of Virginia Supreme Court agreed that Vlaming's religious rights had been violated. And not only that, but the school board, they were also guilty of breaching their contract with Vlaming. And with that being the case, he's been awarded $575,000 for taking a stand against these tiny tyrants, according to his God-given rights. In similar fashion, the Alliance Defending Freedom also secured another victory for 3 more Virginia teachers. They filed a lawsuit against the Harrisonburg City Public School District after discovering that they were being required now to immediately begin using opposite-sex pronouns upon the request of a child, while simultaneously forbidding school staff from sharing information with parents about their child's request. And to the contrary, the school staff was expected to mislead, even deceive the parents of those kids. Well, it was during a series of on-the-job trainings when the school board's non-discrimination policy was presented. The board directed teachers to immediately implement the following practices, which begins with number 1. They were expected to ask students about their preferred names and pronouns. Number 2, they were required to then always use them, even when contrary to the student's sex. And number 3, they were to do so without notifying parents or seeking their consent. What's even worse is that the non-discrimination policy threatened discipline against the non-compliant teachers, which included potential termination. Well, in response to all of this, Deborah Figlioli, Christine Marsh, and Laura Nelson, they filed a lawsuit against the Harrisonburg City Public School District. And after accusing the school board of compelling them to use speech which violates their First Amendment rights, the Alliance Defending Freedom ended up securing another victory against these tiny tyrants who believe that they actually have the power to violate our God-given freedom of speech, as well as the unalienable right to abide by our religious convictions. As we consider these legal victories, I'm thankful that these brave teachers were willing to take this stand for their Christian convictions. And while I believe that we should treat every person with love and respect, I also believe that Christians have been called to speak the truth in a loving way. I like the way that the Apostle John put it in 1 John chapter 3. It's verse 18 where he declares, "My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth." In other words, those who are truly walking in love, we're also walking according to the truth. And while it's easy for us to insist that we're walking in love, listen, those who fail to align their lives with truth are also making claims that are nothing more than empty words and lies. Think about it like this. If we really say that we love someone and yet we're willing to feed their delusion, then we aren't walking in love at all. If you say you love someone, but then you lie to them, well, you're not walking in love. And those who use the preferred pronouns of a person who is struggling with gender dysphoria, well, if you use those preferred pronouns, you're not being loving. No, instead, you're feeding their delusional thoughts. And listen, we have to understand that truth is that which corresponds to reality. Truth is that which corresponds to the way things really are. Therefore, if a person's preferred pronouns fail to correspond to the reality of their genetic information found in their chromosomes, well, then their perception about reality fails to fall in line with the way things really are. That being the case, those who choose to use the preferred pronouns of the person who is struggling with gender dysphoria, they're actually being unloving. And the reason why is because they're fueling the fires of self-deception. It's for this reason that Christians must remember that we've been called to speak the truth, and we should do so in a loving way. I like the way that Paul put it in Ephesians chapter 4. It's verse 15 where he encouraged us to speak the truth in love as we continue to grow in every way more and more like Christ. In other words, those who want to become more and more like Jesus Christ should remember that we've been called to always speak what is true and to do so in a loving way. It's in the same chapter where Paul encouraged every Christian to put away lying, and instead we should speak the truth with our neighbors. In light of these verses, well, there should be no doubt that every Christian should be speaking the truth. And yes, even if a person who's suffering from gender dysphoria asks us to use their preferred pronouns which fail to correspond with the reality of their genetics. If they are asking us to lie to them about their pronouns, we can't do that. Rather than fueling the fires of their self-delusion, we should love them enough to tell them the truth. And the truth is that we've been fearfully and wonderfully made by a God who created mankind to become image bearers of our Lord. With that being the case, we should assure them that God didn't make a mistake when he created their gender. And therefore, they have to get past the self-delusion that leads them to think otherwise. And not only that, but we should also encourage them to realize that the truth of all things is found in Jesus Christ. And as we present them with this truth, the Lord will help us to fight the good fight of faith, and all for the glory of God.